Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into my video. And today I have a little lesson, my first lesson in the Glock Armor series, Glock Profession. This is Introduction to Glock History and Models. This will be the first introduction to the Glock Armorer course, and I will get more in depth, but this is the first edition of it. I'm going to go ahead and start it, and we're going to actually go through the models, the history, and different things like that. I am not going to read all the words. You can pause this at your leisure, because it would be pretty long if I read everything. First of all, I'd like to start Glock models. There's various models. The Glock comes in many calibers. The numbers are named by the number of the patent of the gun. So Glock 19 would be the 19th patent approved. Glock history, the founder was Gaston Glock. He had no experience in firearms. He actually had experience in plastics, advanced synthetic polymers. The Glock 17 was the first prototyped, and he also introduced the ferric nitrocarbazine into the firearms industry as an anti-corrosion surface treatment for metal gun parts. Also, Glock has evolutionary changes over the past 28 years, which each major change is a generation. There's 4 generation changes. Right now we are on the 4th. And let's go through the generations. There's the first generation, was introduced in 1984. The Glock pistols continued their rise to status with very few changes. Glock switched to the captive recoil spring fairly early in the pistol's life, and the serial number became stamped on embedded steel plates in the dust cover. The second generation, 1988, Glock added some checkering on the front and back straps on all of its models, and in 1990 the locking block was enlarged, and they added an additional crosspin which aided in the non-9mm caliber, and that was easier to assemble. Third generation, 1998, they changed the frame. They had an accessory rail, the universal Glock rail, thumb rest and finger grooves, and the chamber indicator and OD color was added to the lineup. In 2002, the 17, 19, and 34 models started using the larger locking block and additional cross pin to simplify the production. The next would be our 4th generation, and in 2010, Glock brought out the latest version of the Glock Safe Action pistol. The changes, they came in different kind of frames. There was an SF frame, smaller grip circumference with the added back straps, captive dual recoil spring assembly, and a truncated pyramid grip texture and a larger reversible magazine release. The RTF2 came out in 2009 with the pyramid grip texture and scalloped slide serrations. They call them fish gills. It's considered a 3rd generation. Glock produced the RTF2 in 17, 19, 22, 23, and 23C. Then they dropped the crescent-shaped slide serrations and started using the standard slide serrations on the RTF2 models. As of 2011, the RTF2 model Glocks were only available to law enforcement. Majority of law enforcement agencies do use the Glock 17 and 9mm. Many do use the Glock 21 and 45, and also the Glock 20 and 10mm. Like I say, you can read most of this here, and I'll skip some of it. Because of internal safeties, all that's needed in emergencies is to draw the handgun and fire it. It is a striker-fired weapon. It works without a hammer or fire pin. The firing pin or striker sits captive. Now, this is telling you actually how it fires, so you can read through this. The spring tension inside the slide, I'm not going to read all of it. The striker is usually prevented from moving forward. And then you see firing pin blocks. In the Glock, the spring is partially set under tension. The shooter pulls the trigger. Then the safeties are disengaged by the mechanism. The trigger bar actually pushes up on the safety plunger, pushes that in, and the striker fires. Then it goes back, and the round fires, and it loads again. Like it says, the slide is removed under recoil, ejecting the spent round, chambering a new one. In the same process, it resets itself. The Glock's fully captured state in some other pistols. The shooter releases pressure, and then the process starts again. In the early 80s, Glock introduced Glock safe action pistols. Glock set new international standards. Glock is used by over 65% of law enforcement and security throughout the world. Also, it's used everywhere in the world. Glocks are also great for self-defense. Glock pistols have very little parts, only 34 parts in a rugged polymer frame. That's why modifying the Glocks is not a good idea, because they are built for durability, and they're built for defense, and they function best the way they are. When you start modifying them, a lot of parts that you put in are very finicky. So you make it into a target gun, but if you have a target gun, it's not going to be a self-defense EDC gun, because those parts are a lot more finicky. And, it's just a lot harder to take care of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini than it is a Chevy or a Ford, because it's a lot more high performance, and you have to do a lot more maintenance on it. There's many Glock models, and they are noted, like I say, by the number, and that relates to the patent. Now, what follows is what I have is some of the different models. It's kind of lengthy, but I'm going to kind of go through it as fast as I can. You can read a lot of this. It's got specifications and different things. So we're going to start first with the Gen 41, which is one of the newer 45 ACPs. As you can see, it's 45 ACP, trigger pulse 5.5, and the weight loaded is 36 ounces. And I'm not going to go through every one of them, but you can compare it when you want to. The Glock 42 is another new one. It's 380 ACP. That has the same thing, a trigger pull of 5.5 pounds, and it is a 6-shot. It is less than 1 inch thick, actually 0.94 inches. The Glock 17, 17C, and 17L, which is long slide, are all 9 millimeters, and I'm mainly going to just focus on some of the things. The Glock 17 and 17C have a 5.5 trigger pull, and if we look here, you can follow my mouse. If we look at the 17L, it has a 4.5, so that's a little bit difference there. Its capacity on both of them are 17. Like I say, the Glock 17 and the 17C, C stands for compensated. It's going to be a little lighter. You can see the weights in here. If you look at the weight here, sure the weights, it will be a little lighter because there's less metal. If you go over the 17 long slide, it's going to be a little heavier. You got a little bit more metal in it, even if you compare it to just the standard. There's a 2 ounce difference. Go to the Glock 19. This is basically a compact version of the Glock 17. It's also 9 millimeter. And if you look down here, trigger pull is still 5.5 pounds. The width is 1.18 inches. And here's the Glock 19 and the Glock 19 Gen 4 here. So it shows the Glock 19, the Glock 19 Gen 4, and the Glock 19C. Different weights. And the Glock 20, which is definitely probably the most powerful Glock they make, and that's in the 10 millimeter chambered round. And the 10 millimeter is basically like a Smith & Wesson 40 on steroids. It's a longer cartridge. It is like a Magnum. It's like having a Smith & Wesson 500 and Smith & Wesson 500 Magnum, or having a 50 Action Express and a Smith & Wesson 500 Magnum. So you could compare them. It's a longer cartridge, same diameter bullet. Trigger pulls are about the same, 5.5 pounds. And we have on the left the Glock 20 SF and the Glock 20 Gen 4. And the SF is, like I say, they thinned it out a little. It fits in your hand a little bit better, but it is not a compensated one. They don't make a G20 SF compensated. And compensated, of course, then has the ports in the barrel, where it helps with your keeping your muzzle flip down. Because when you shoot the gun, the gases push down, push the barrel down. And if we look on the right here, we have the G20 Glock 20 and the Glock 20C. Of course, the Glock 20 is just the standard one. Glock 20C is compensated, and if you look down here, right about here where the weights are, we can see the various weights. Now we're going to go to the next one, the Glock 21. The Glock 21, of course, is 45 ACP, and we're doing some comparisons. If you look on the left, you have the Glock 21 SF, and then you have the Glock 21C. C is compensated, the 21 SF. They do not make a compensated gun in the 21 SF either. That's why I've owned them, pretty much all of them on this sheet, and I had the 21C. I liked it, so I bought a 21 SF, and then I went ahead and sent that out and got it compensated. And then again, you have your weights here. Your trigger pull, 5.5 on each side. Then if you go over to the right, you have your 21 SF, your 21 Gen 4, and here's your weights. Trigger pull, of course, is the same. You have your barrel lengths and widths. It is kind of a pretty thick gun. It's a 1.27 inches overall in width. Now if we go into the Glock 22 and 22C, Generation 4 Smith & Wesson 40, this is a popular police pistol. It is 15 round capacity. And if we get into the weights here, here's your weights again. You can follow my mouse cursor here. Down there. It'll break up your weights. And you can pause these at any time if you want to look. And it's a good reference if you're going to buy a gun to look at this information. It's really handy to have. This covers all the Glock models. And the width is 1.18 inches. And then we have the Glock 23, which is a lot more compact. But you notice it still has that 1.18 width. Still the same trigger pull. Here's your weights again in the 23 and the 23C. The 23C is a compensated, and I have it listed right there if you take a look there. A lot of them aren't listed up here on the top, but I do have the models pretty much in there. Now I'll move to the next one is the 24. The Glock 24 is a Smith & Wesson 40. As we see, that is a longer barrel and extended sight radius. And we can see that same width, but we have a 9.56 length. And the trigger pull, of course, is still 5.5. The trigger pulls will change, and also it's a notable exception. You'll see hexagonal and polygonal right-hand twisting in some of these guns, in different lengths of the twist. Okay, the next one is going to go into your 380 ACP. And I was surprised too when I started going through this. I didn't realize they made a bunch of 380s, not just the new one that they just came out with. There's a Glock 25 and a Glock 28. The Glock 25 here we see on the left is developed for the South American market, but you could still get in the United States. The 28 is the deep concealment model. There's a different capacity. The 25 is 15 rounds. The 28 is 10 rounds. Trigger pulls are about the same. Width is about the same, 1.18 inches. Now we go to the Glock 26, which is 9mm, and the Glock 27, which is Smith & Wesson 40. The Glock 25 is a 9mm, holds 10 rounds. It's still a 1.18, and it still has the same 5.5 pound trigger pull. The barrel's a little shorter there. And then when you move to the 27, that's given 9 rounds. Of course, the 27, the Smith & Wesson, I guess that's a little bit more meatier bullet. It's a little bit more bigger, and it does weigh a little bit more. So that's a decision you're going to have to make. Overall, for that difference of one bullet, whether you're going to have a Smith & Wesson 40 or a Glock 9mm, that's a decision you have to make. Pretty much everything looks about the same. Barrels, like 0.2 difference, 0.1. Okay, so we'll move to the next one. And next is the Glock 29. This is the big one. The Glock 29 and the 29 SF. The only difference here is minimal. Capacitors are all the same. There's a fraction of difference in the weight of the gun, but there's not much. I mean, it's just so, if you look at the length, the Glock 29 is 6.96 inches, and the Glock 29 SF is 6.88 inches. So that's really the big difference, and a little bit of the weight, but everything else is pretty much the same. So, you know, I think it would be what feels in your hand better, because the 21 SF, I'm sorry, the Glock 29 SF, that feels a lot better in the hand. All the SFs do. Then we go into the Glock 30S, which is 45 ACP. This is the next generation slim 45 ACP. This is a 45 ACP that holds 10 rounds. The width is 1.27 inches. That's thick. I know they say it's slim, but it's pretty thick in my book. It's kind of heavy, 30 ounces weight, loaded, 22.95 ounces with the magazine. Trigger pull is about the same on most of the other ones, 5.5. Barrel length, 3.77. That's pretty small. Okay, and the next one, let's go ahead and start on. And we are going to look at the Glock 30 and the Glock 30 SF. They're both 45 ACP. I didn't have enough room on the sheet to put the 30S in here too, which is slim model. But you have that. You can always refer back to it. So on the left here, we see the Glock 30. Nothing really jumping out at me. We have that 1.27 width. That's thick. That's really thick gun. At 5.5 pounds, 10 rounds, 3.7 inch barrel. The 30 SF, there's not going to be minimal difference if you look in. There's a little difference in weight, and I don't see much of a difference at all. Yeah, pretty much just weight. And the length of it, 6.96 in the 30, 6.88 in the 30 SF, and they do not make a compensated one in that. So, you know, it depends. They call the 30 SF the concealed carry Glock, and the deep cover 45 is the 30. So, go figure. Glock 31, we get into the 357. I believe it's a 357 SIG. Yeah, I guess it's an okay bullet. I guess it's just a trade-off. Caliber is .357. It's 8.03 barrel. If you look at the weights on these guns here, down with my little cursor here, they have a 31C, which is compensated. They do make one. And there's a difference in weight, of course, because there's a little bit less metal. Barrel length, 4.48 inches. Same thing on the trigger pull is 5.5 pounds. Like I say, once again, you can always stop these to refer back to them. It's good to have this documentation. The next one, we're going to get into the Glock 32 and 33. They're both 357 SIG, but if you look here, the Glock 32, they make a 32 and a 32C. Of course, the 32C, that's compensated, which means it has holes in the barrel that helps lessen the muzzle flip. The tendency when you shoot the gun for the gun to shoot up in your hand and flip away from the target. The gases on the top push it down. We see it as the same thing, a 5.5 trigger pull. Barrel's 4.01. 7.28 inches is the length. And then we go to the Glock 33, which is concealed carry one, which is supposed to be a little smaller. It's not bad. It's 6.41 inches. That is pretty small. It's a little lighter if you look at the weight loaded, 26.65. So it's really not bad of a gun. But the trigger pull is the same, and they make a lot of Glocks, guys. The next one's the Glock 34, which is another 9mm, and they call it the Tactical Practical Glock. For just those reasons. It has a pretty long length, 8.74. The barrel's 5.31. Width is not bad, 1.18. Now, this is where we get down to here. Because it is sort of a tactical, they have a 4.5 pound trigger pull in this. And it's a little longer, has a good line of sight, and the width is, that's about average for the Glocks. But that 4.5 pounds, so that gives you a little bit more a little bit better, a little less of a trigger pull, about a pound less. And of course, if you do some internal 50-cent Glock jobs and tune it up like that, I wouldn't recommend putting aftermarket parts in it. But if you did a little tune up on it, you could make it a little bit more accurate and maybe a little bit better trigger. And let's go to the next one. Next one's the Glock 35 Smith & Wesson 40. And this, according to here, if you look at the very first bullet, extended Glock 22 to 1911 length. So they're making it like the 1911 length. It's a Glock 22 with the 1911 length, so they call it the Glock 35. Length is 8.74. We still look at the same width, like 1.18. But it's kind of heavy, probably because of that barrel. Look at that, 31.18 ounces. But also, you're getting the 4.5 pound trigger on this gun too. Seems like the semi-competition, long slide, longer guns like that, seems they give you a little bit better trigger pull, about a pound less. And the next one is the Glock 36. And we're actually getting maybe closer to ones that we know. This is a compact 45 in 9mm size. It has a width of 1.10 inches, and that's pretty good. That's, dropped. The other ones were about 1.18, and this is somewhere 1.27, so this is not that bad. It's a pretty thin gun. This has the octagonal right-hand twist, capacity of 6, 27-ounce gun, which is not too bad. That's about 3 ounces less than a Smith & Wesson 640, but when you load it, it's probably 30 ounce to 640. 5.5 pounds trigger pull, and on all these you notice they have about the same trigger travel, 0.49 inches. Barrel's 3.77, so that's kind of neat. That's kind of small. Okay, we'll go into the next one, Glock 37, the 45 gap. I'm not a big fan of the gap cartridge. I like 45 ACP. This, I think, as you can see the first bullet here, combination of 45 AC power and 45 gap qualities. What qualities does 45 gap give you? I don't really know. And as notice on some of these have the octagonal versus the hexagonal twist. So what benefit that is, like I say, they decide for the bullet the way it spins to get the most out of the bullet in that particular barrel for that caliber. Now, the magazine capacity is 10, and the trigger pull on here is, of course, still 5.5. Barrel, of course, is going to be 4.48 inches. Now we move into the Glock 38 and 39, two more 45 gaps. We see the 38 is concealed carry, they call it, 1.18, and it's, that's actually bigger than the one we just saw that was 1.10. Barrel 4.01, same kind of pull, 5.5 pounds with a capacity 8. We move over to the smallest power and the smallest 45 gap, which is the Glock 39. That's 1.18. The barrel's 3.42. That's pretty small. I think it's smaller than the Glock 30 we're looking at. I think it had 3.77, but I'd have to go back to that. Same thing with trigger pulls on all of them, pretty much, other than those ones we mentioned, and some that are coming up. If you are a fan of the 45 gap, I guess this wouldn't be a bad gun. I'm just, I'm not. I'd rather have 45 ACP. And then the very last one is the Glock 18. The Glock 18 is a full automatic or select fire automatic machine pistol. The Glock 18 is the non-compensated one. The Glock 18C is compensated. As you can see, the first bullet, selective fire. The barrel is 8.03 inches. Same width, the 1.18. Barrel length is 4.49. This has got the hexagonal twist on it. And the rate of fire On the left-hand side, we see my cursor, 1,200 rounds per minute. This does have a 5.5 trigger pull, barrel length 4.49 inches. That's pretty much, straightforward when you're looking at those. And with the 18 is it. Now that's totally illegal. However, there is some select fire modifications you can do to them, but don't recommend them. Okay, the next one, I just wanted to give you guys a comparison and let you know, you've seen these terminology, polygonal and hexagonal rifling and attributes in these different guns. Polygonal refers to the type of rifling. Hexagonal or octagonal on the 45 ACP and 45 gap models refers to the number of rifling grooves. Okay, so polygonal is the type, hexagonal is the rifling grooves. Glock uses polygonal rifling instead of cut rifling because the Glock polygonal barrel rifling reduces wear and tear on the barrel and creates better bullet-to-bullet fit. This will minimize your barrel residue and produces consistent and increased bullet velocity and resulting in enhanced accuracy. But I just want to correct it because I know you've seen that terminology throughout the course, and I hope you learned something. Like I say, I've always said that I don't recommend people modify their Glocks too much, putting ghost triggers in and pyramid trigger systems and ghost connectors and changing a lot of stuff out. You change it too much, you're going to change the dynamics of the gun. Really, when they made the gun, it was not a target gun. It was down in the dirty EDC, self-defense gun, weapon to get dirty, get wet, get blood and guts on it, and work. When you start modifying it, you change the dynamics of the gun. Plating's okay, maybe maybe doing a 50-cent trigger job, but I would stay away from aftermarket parts because you can actually have problems. And also with them, you don't really want to polish on the back where the striker is too much either. I've known people modify that too much, that little lip, and they can really make their gun actually go full auto and be very dangerous. There's a lot of modifications you can do with the guns. You can do a lot. But just remember also one thing. If you ever plate your gun and you plate it like a PVD coating or something, heat gets hot, the inside sleeve, there is a inside sleeve the striker rides it, that can actually get melted. So you got to be really careful there. You should probably get a tool. I will have a video on that in the next probably armor course that I'll be presenting. So thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope this was educational. I do have some little icons and stuff you can click on throughout the slideshow presentation that will take you to different places to give you a little information on more on the Glocks. But thanks a lot. Stay tuned for my next, the Glock Armor, Glock Perfection. Thanks for watching, guys, and hope everybody has a great day. Thanks.